Roll through parts of the weekend, and the wind is still blowing with that wind warning in place till about 10 o'clock. I will have details on what you can expect for today and the extended coming up.
And to be clear, the struggle in Venezuela is between dictatorship and democracy, and freedom has the momentum. Nicolas Maduro is a dictator with no legitimate claim to power, and Nicolas Maduro must go.
Of course, that was Vice President Mike Pence speaking about the situation in Venezuela as it intensifies, and the U.S. taking a firm position. He was actually in Florida, where there's a large concentration of Venezuelan expatriates. Tensions are growing as this battle over who is going to lead the country continues. Lots to sort out. We have St. Mary's political science professor Ron Ahnen joining us now in studio. You specialize in global and regional politics. You research a lot in Latin America, and we are talking about this situation there. It's a lot of Maduro versus Guido. Who's in charge? But there's a lot happening in Venezuela that we were talking about in terms of just what it's like living there and the situation for the folks who are there and the ones who have fled.
Well, the economic crisis is acute. We're looking at an economy that has shrunk by 30% in the last couple of years. Poverty has skyrocketed, and nearly 10% of the country has fled. We have shortages of food, shortages of medicine, so the situation is quite dire.
And when we're talking about this battle of wills and power, you've got Maduro with the army and the military behind him, which it was the big issue. You have Guido, who kind of comes a little bit out of nowhere for folks, and then you've got the secondary humanitarian aid when you're talking about the situation of can we go in, should we go in, and it really creates in this interim, you know, a public crisis of trying to bring help while all of this is sorted out.
You know, I think what we need to remember is that this is the culmination of a long historical battle between this small sector of middle class and elite that was ousted by Chavez in '99 in favor of the poor, right? And now this middle class, after being 20 years out of power, trying to figure out how to come back. What we had in Venezuela previous to Chavez was a government that was democratically elected, but that was exclusionary. And so we had billions of dollars of profit in oil, but none of that was really going to benefit the majority of people. Poverty was reduced under Chavez, but the problem now is that Maduro, with the current economic crisis, has become undemocratic. The recent elections were really not up to snuff, and so that's where we're at with the present crisis.
A lot of questions about the legitimacy of his rule at this point. The question is, where does the U.S. stand in this? We just heard from Mike Pence. He was also saying, look, it's time to take action. The talk is over. They're not going to talk with Maduro at all. They want Guido. Where do you see the U.S.'s role in this, and where could this lead when they're talking about action? What type of action the U.S. could take?
I think the U.S. is threatening military action. I think that the U.S. in supporting Guaido is supporting a very thin interpretation of Article 233 of the Venezuela Constitution. I won't get into the details. I think what we need to do is really support the Venezuelan people. And the way that we can do that is by offering more aid for refugees, but we need to also foster that dialogue. Venezuela is in a situation politically where they are hyper-polarized. I know we think we're polarized in our country politically. You'd have to ratchet that up a few degrees of magnitude to understand Venezuela. What's really necessary is fostering a national dialogue so that when Maduro goes, if he goes, or if there's new elections, that will be up to the Venezuelan people, and then they will be able to create a stable situation.
Where is the danger here? Because it doesn't look like anyone's talking. You're talking about dialogue, and you both, you know, Maduro's saying, I will talk to Guido, but Guido's saying, I'm not interested. And you've got, again, the vice president saying talk is over. So dialogue may be, you know, one of the options. It doesn't seem to be an option right now, at least as we're talking at this moment. So where does it go, and what is the danger? Maduro also was quoted saying, look, if you come and attack me, it's going to be worse than a Vietnam for you. I mean, so there's a lot of, it seems like maybe dialogue's what's needed, but it's not what we're necessarily getting.
It is a dangerous situation. Today we've got the two marches. There's going to be a pro-Maduro and an anti-Maduro march. They could get violent very easily, even if no one intends it to be that way. Mexico and Uruguay have offered to start talks in Montevideo, capital of Uruguay, next week. Spain was on board. What really needs to be done is a national reconciliation. so that when there is a peaceful transition, it will be a transition that will be stable and lasting.
You talked about this years in the making. How long do you think resolution is going to take?
I think it's going to take a long time.
All right, well, we'll keep an eye on it. Ron Ahnen, thanks so much for coming in and giving us your insight. We certainly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, we'll head over to Rosemary now for a check of our forecast.
All right, thanks so much, Claudine. Outside our doors this morning, the rain continues to fall, the winds continue to blow, and we do have an advisory that started last night, continuing into this morning.